Manor Lords has been out for a bit over a week now, and we're all busy building our cities, exploring the game and learning how to play it to have the experience that best suits us. Today, I'm sharing some of my best beginner advice based on things that I found out by myself and from other players as well on the internet that completely changed the way I play the game. Here's some essential and basic Manor Lords beginner tips from a fellow beginner. The first tip is to upgrade your homeless people tents. Did you know you could do this? I sure did not the first time I played. You can upgrade your homeless people tents into a worker camp for just one log, and this is something that you should consider doing as soon as possible, ideally as your first move. Doing this will make the migration of new families into your city faster, which is important because having a large workforce is essential for city development in the early game. In the scenario where you don't upgrade your homeless people tents, you have a homelessness debuff on your city, which causes the approval rating to slowly decrease during the early stages of the game. A low approval rating causes people to not be interested in moving into your city. To counter this debuff, you would have to gather enough active positive buffs to negate the homelessness debuff, like having enough food variety in the market, for example, or even building a church, which might take a while. However, if you upgrade the homeless people tents into a worker camp, you don't get the homelessness debuff, meaning you need less positive buffs for your approval rating to start increasing, and people being interested in moving into the city. Moreover, unlike the tents, the worker camp actually serves as housing for the 5 families you start the game with, meaning you need to build less houses for people to start moving in. While with the homeless people tents you need to build 6 burgage plots for people to start moving in, as in 5 for the starter families plus another one for a new family, with the worker camp you can have people move in as soon as you build your first burgage plot if the approval rating is already high enough. In this particular example, I got my first new residents in just 2 months after the beginning of the game, with just 2 burgage plots built. There will still be a homelessness warning for your 5 starter families who live in the worker camp, so you'll have to build houses for them eventually and delete your worker camp to get them to move to the empty plots, as they won't move out of the worker camp on their own. When you do start building these houses, you may consider building dedicated plots for vegetable farming. Food can be a scarce resource in Manor Lords. The berries and meat you have access to in the beginning of the game are great in the early stages when your population is low, but will soon be unable to keep up with the city's growth and increasing food demands. Bread is a sustainable option mid to late game, but it is the outcome of a long production chain that involves multiple steps between the conversion of wheat into bread. It's also a product of farming, which means it is dependent on seasonality and land fertility, and requires multiple families assigned to it and a bit of micromanagement as well to be reliable. One option that you have available at the very beginning that could set up your city for success in the food production area and prevent future starvation is to grow your own vegetables, quite literally. For the cost of just 15 silver, you can upgrade the extension plots of your villagers' houses into vegetable gardens, where residents will automatically sow, plant, grow and harvest vegetables for the entire city in a completely automated process that requires you to do absolutely nothing. The beauty of vegetable farming, and what makes it a very reliable source of food, is that the amount of vegetables you get is scalable and dependent on the size of the extension area of the burgage plot. The larger the area of the burgage plot, the more vegetables it will provide. There are of course other alternatives such as chicken, but this costs 25 silver instead of 15, and the output is not scalable. And honey and apple trees are locked behind technology points which you might want to use for other things, as we will see later in this video. Therefore, it's a good idea to add vegetable gardens to decently sized houses, especially because the cost to build these is always 15 silver, regardless of size. Meaning that for the same yield, it's cheaper to build one large vegetable garden than several smaller ones. You can even go completely bonkers on the size, but keep in mind that the larger the field, the longer the residents will take to plant and sow the crops, and the less time they will have to work on their actual jobs, chopping wood, producing leather, or managing the family's marketplace stall. If it's too big, the families may not even be able to complete the work in one season, meaning some of the field will be unused, so a bit of moderation and planning may be appropriate. Speaking of planning, the next tip is a city planning tip. Proximity equals efficiency. One of the things I've noticed is that people take a lot of their time, perhaps even most of it, traveling between locations. In between working, resting, transporting, praying, or getting a drink, people spend most of their days walking. This is more aggravated due to the fact that the amount of time dedicated to executing certain activities is disproportionately shorter than the time spent on walking. For example, it takes less in-game time for my woodcutter to build 5 pieces of firewood from a log than it takes him to get to the woodcutter's lodge from his house. Here's another absurd example. It takes more time for people to cross a small 10-building-sized village to the construction site of a house than the time it takes to actually build the freaking house. That's the real-life equivalent of you spending 4 hours on your daily commute to your job, working for just 1 hour before going back home in another 4-hour commute. This is of course natural because, as a video game, realism needs to be sacrificed for the sake of better gameplay. Point being, the shorter the distance between key facilities, the faster and more efficient people get their jobs done, the faster they produce and the faster your city develops. It may seem historically accurate, perhaps even romantic, to build a logging camp in the forest edge, on the opposite corner of the region, or to create isolated houses away from the city center with a large grass field in between. And while you can certainly do that, it will also cause people to spend more time traveling and transporting resources between locations. Of course, this is entirely dependent on how you enjoy playing the game and whether you are willing to compromise aesthetics for efficiency. But from a completely practical point of view, it makes sense to place buildings that work together next to each other. The saw pit, which uses logs to produce planks, should be next to the logging camp as that's where logs are stored. The charcoal kiln, which uses firewood to produce coal, should be next to the woodcutter's lodge. The main granary and storehouse where the bulk of the city's resources are stored should be centrally located to serve the entire city and adjacent to the marketplace to allow for quick restocking. The malt house would be close to the breweries, which in turn would be next to the tavern. The logging camp should be in a tree-dense area with a lot of room to expand, far away from the berry bushes but close enough for the city for quick transportation of logs. Additionally, it could be a very smart idea for the location of logging camps to also be the location of stables and hitching posts, so that the oxen can quickly move from their resting place to the log deposits. Speaking of oxen, let's talk a little bit about man's best friend. And I do mean oxen and not dogs, because in Manor Lords, oxen are indeed the man's best friend due to how indispensable they are. Next tip is to get a second ox as soon as possible. When you want to construct a building, the required materials need to be transported to the building site. Stones and planks can't be transported by humans who are idle and are not assigned to any building. So this will almost never become a problem during city development as long as you have some unassigned families. Logs, on the other hand, can only be carried by an ox. Since pretty much every building needs logs to build, the more horny friends you have, the faster wood is delivered. Let's put this into perspective. Let's say you have set the building site for 5 houses. Each house requires 2 logs to build, meaning you need 10 logs for the entire project. Since the ox can only deliver 1 log at a time, it will have to make 10 trips between the building site and the logging camp to provide the necessary materials. Are you building a church at the same time? That's another 10 logs, my friend. Now your poor single ox has 20 trips in its pipeline, which will take a substantial amount of time to complete before your villagers have the necessary materials to actually start constructing. Thus, it should be easy to understand that if you don't develop your fleet of oxen as you expand your city, It won't be uncommon to have construction projects paralyzed because logs aren't being delivered fast enough. The second ox is particularly important because it will instantly double the log delivery rate, being a particularly important investment to make during early game for just 20 silver. Just don't forget to upgrade your hitching post to a stable to accommodate this extra ox. At later stages, you might find appropriate to have at least 6 to 8 oxen per region, depending on your building style and how many facilities you tend to have under construction at the same time. The more buildings under construction, the more logs that need to be carried. Also, keep in mind that building is not the only thing that requires logs. The saw pit also needs logs to produce planks, so if you have a region which specializes in exporting warbows, shields or other wood-made materials, and have like 4 or 5 active saw pits, you will need enough oxen to not only ensure the log delivery for the region's construction projects, but also to maintain a constant log supply for every single one of those saw pits. While you're getting all those oxen, you might want to track where they are and monitor what they're doing at a given time, which can become rather difficult as the city grows and it gets more and more confusing to understand where things are. Pressing and holding the tab button will make your life much easier. See those icons that look like cows? Each one indicates an ox. It seems most of them are working, getting wood in the wood cutting area next to the logging camp. This view also provides other valuable information. Functional buildings like hunting camps, logging camps or sheep houses are marked with a cog. Right next to it you can see how many families are assigned to work on those buildings and the maximum number of families you can assign. See those red numbers there? It means those buildings have no families assigned to work there and are currently not functioning. Some key buildings have their own icons to make them easier to find, like stables, granaries, storehouses or pasture fields. You can also see how many buildings you have under construction and respective construction progress. As for housing information, the first icon is a number between 1 and 3, indicating the level of that particular burgage plot. That green icon means all needs for that plot are being met and the building is ready to be upgraded to the next level. The hammer right next to it, also in green, indicates that the plot has a free extension area that hasn't been defined yet and can be turned into a vegetable garden, chicken coop, blacksmith, etc. You can also have an overall view of what people are lacking. It seems this row of houses are missing clothes and leisure. Alright, let's talk about the war and the economy. If you want to get a decent plantation of vegetables and an efficient fleet of oxen, as I've mentioned in my previous tips, you will need silver. A reliable and very easy way of getting silver early game is by attacking bandit camps. You will spend a portion of your experience getting raided by bandits, so why not give them a taste of their own medicine and raid them as well. From time to time, these messages will appear on your warning feed, letting you know that a bandit camp has spawned. If you zoom out, you can identify them on the map. They always spawn outside your current region. You can attack these camps and if you defeat the bandits there, you gain some influence which can be used to claim different regions on the map. Even better, you can then loot a camp for a decent amount of silver. Now, if you have that city building vibe where you just want to build your city peacefully, combat might be a bit off-putting to you or perhaps even scary. However, bandit camps are very easy to deal with. In fact, you don't even have to do any combat at all. If you have a manor, you can send your 5-man retinue to the region where the bandit camp is. Now here's the thing, your rival, the one marked in yellow in the map, will also attack the bandit camp as soon as it spawns. One particular good tactic is to let him take care of the bandits while you snatch the silver from the camp. This way, you don't lose any of your troops and you don't directly send your villagers into battle and they can focus on their daily tasks developing the city. Watch as I do just that. When you reach the camp, you have the option to send the silver either to your villagers or to your own private treasury, which you can then use to hire mercenaries, which I'll refer to next. Here's the thing, if you don't defeat the bandits yourself, you don't get any influence, which is a resource that can be useful later on when conquering the map. So it may pay off right now to get involved in a bit of combat, especially because you can still defeat the bandits without involving your villagers or your own military by hiring mercenaries. These cost some silver from your own private treasury, and not original silver that you use to buy oxen or upgrade extension areas in houses. This is worth it because the silver that you get by defeating a bandit camp is in most situations higher than what it costs to hire the mercenaries in the first place. A single group of mercenaries is enough to handle an entire bandit camp. Just keep in mind that once you hire them, they spawn in a set region of the map on the very edge, and you might need to travel the entire map to get to the camp. Don't forget that your rival is also going for the camp, so use the sprint function to beat him there if necessary. After you get all that silver from raiding bandit camps, you will need somewhere to spend it. That's where trading comes in. Trading allows you to import every single item and resource that you don't have, as well as exporting resources you don't need. Don't have good fertility for farming? That's fine, just import your barley seeds and wheat. Did you make more than 200 warbows before realizing archers are not that good without other units on the front line? Just export them all. As useful as it could be, there are some ways to optimize trading to get the best possible outcomes. At the current stage of the game, I would say the trading branch in the development tree is the most useful development in the game, perhaps even overpowered. The first point puts a cap on the max cost of creating trading routes, and the second one removes the import tax, making import prices the same as export prices. This makes it possible to specialize a region in trading and get tons and tons of silver. One of the things I found to be most rewarding is to pair the trading development branch with the mining development branch, which unlocks deep mines, which are particularly relevant if you happen to have a rich iron deposit in your region. This allows you to mine unlimited iron and turn it into very expensive tools like spears or halberds, which you can then export. Let's say you're producing and exporting spears, which take iron to produce. Once this item is saturated on the market, just stop producing spears and start producing something else like halberds or swords and export those instead, while the demand for spears goes back up. If you don't have a rich iron deposit, you can still use a similar strategy with wood materials, namely warbows, wood parts, or small shields. Even though it's not as effective because there's not much variety in expensive wooden tools, and also because planks are used for many other valuable things. By exporting a wide variety of expensive goods, you can make generous amounts of silver, which in turn can be used to buy and import pretty much everything your city is lacking at very modest prices because you have unlocked the best trading branches. Okay, so that's all I have for today. Did I forget something important that is crucial for beginners to know? What are your best tips for Manor Lords? Please tell me in the comments and share them with the community. I very much want to know what you've discovered and learn more about the game. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.